Hi, I'm Owen Stevens and this is Creature Earth. Today we're in Manchuria, China, in a place known as Fossil Creek. Now this place is literally teeming with all sorts of prehistoric fossil evidence. Today we're going to look at some examples, and towards the end of the show we've got a special treat for you. Come along. Now what we have here is a freshwater nautilus. Now this is a fairly recent inhabitant of here. This is not a fossil, but this is an empty shell of a freshwater nautilus, the kind that you'd find all over this region. And they don't grow quite as large as the oceanic nautilus do, but you see how the shell has got all the typical coils and such. When they're not fossilized, you see they're very brittle. They break very easily here. But this is very common in this region. But this is not a particularly unusual find in itself, but just an example of the kind of things that you'll find here. Now, another thing that you'll find here is a lot of these things that just appear to be common rocks. When you see something like this, at first you don't recognize what it is. But if we turn this over, you'll see the lines here that are created when this organism grows the shell. It creates a new line, kind of like a tree having a new ring every spring. But you see this, and once you examine it a little bit further, it becomes quite clear that this is a freshwater mollusk. Now these are extinct now. Probably 20 to 30 million years ago they lived in this area. And you can find these fossils once in a while, but it takes a trained eye to be able to find these from just looking. Most people just think that they're looking at rocks, but as you can see when you examine it more closely, it's very clearly a fossil. Now what we have here is a fossil of a rock worm. Now this worm lives actually in the rock, and it eats and digests the rock. You see here there's a little bit of a hook that they put into the rock to hang on, so when the waters, the flood waters come, they don't wash away. Now you see the mouth here with the very sharp, jagged teeth that they crush the rock as they bore through it and digest it. And this is an exceptional example, as it's been exposed a little bit, and it's not been broken off. Like most of the fossils, sometimes when they get exposed a little bit, they get broken off. But this is a very good one here. We see this. Another example of a fossil we have here. So over here we have a freshwater nautilus. This is a pretty good example. You can see the coil shape there. This is a typical of the nautilus. Now this is not as large as you would find in, say, the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, but nonetheless you can tell that it's definitely an aquatic a shell of some sort. Now we got a little bit of a fossil here, some sort of evidence that I can't quite identify at the moment, but you can just see all over, there's all sorts of evidence all over the rock of aquatic life that's just been fossilized here. And this is why this place is just such a great place for fossil hunters to come and see what they can find. Now, here's another example that we found here. This is a very interesting example of something that's become extinct. We no longer have these around, but this is a mammoth amoeba. It's a giant single-cell organism. This one's been broken in half, so you can see kind of the cross-section of the body here. Now, you see in the very center here, the white part, that's the nucleus of this organism. And it's surrounded by a very thick membrane to protect the nucleus. And then the outer part of the body is around it. Now, these are extremely rare, but we found one that's pretty much intact. It's been broken in half, but these will no longer exist, of course. They're very rare, but this is a single-cell organism that lived maybe 70, 100 billion years ago in this aquatic region. Now, what we have here is a very interesting piece, not particularly rare, but quite interesting. This is the femur bone of the Asian panda pig. Now this pig was an herbivore. We think of most pigs as being omnivores, but this was an herbivore pig that ate mostly the bamboo that you find in this region, similar to this one here. It eats the bamboo primarily, and then hence it got the name the panda pig. Now what we see here very clearly is the hip joint of the pig, and then the knee joint as well. So a very interesting piece. preserved. I'd say this is maybe 40 million years old. We don't see this kind of pig around here anymore. They've gone extinct. This is interesting. We found this piece by itself, which means that the animal probably died somewhere far upstream, and just the erosion of the water washed this particular bone downstream. There are a lot of things of this nature in this creek bed. You'll find all sorts of fossils of different things, turtles, fish of all sorts, which leads us to our very final artifact. Well, this is the piece that we've been promising you. Now, it's a shark's tooth, and normally you wouldn't think of a shark living in waters like this. But local legend has it that a giant fish lived in these waters. They call it the giant dragonfish. And the legend says that this fish was so big that it could swallow an entire village in one gulp.
The people of this region have a legend of a huge fish that swam this creek. It was called the giant dragonfish. Until we found this tooth, we believed this story was only a myth. But now, we have reason to believe this fish, the giant dragonfish, really did exist. This is really an extraordinary find.
Now, we know this is a shark's tooth because of the classic shape. The root at the top and the tooth protruding down. It's fossilized, we say probably 40 million years old. Now, based on the size of this tooth, we presume this animal to have been at least 20 meters long. That's over 60 feet. Now, can you imagine it? Picture this in your mind, a fish of that size roaming up and down these waters. It must have been terrifying to the local people. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our visit to Fossil Creek. This is such a fascinating place because you literally cannot take a single step without finding more fossils. Now, this has been a protected area by the Chinese government for many years, so professionals and visitors alike are restricted from this area. I alone was granted unique access, and this is such an exciting time for me, and I hope you've enjoyed being able to see this wonderful, preserved place on our Earth. That's it for now. I'm Owen Stevens, and this is Creature Earth.